I'm so excited to talk to you guys today about what my class has been doing this semester. And I have lots of tips on how you can create professional TV newscasts from home. My name's Jeanette Abrahamson. I teach students how to tell stories using their cell phones. Before I became an instructor, I produced TV news in some of America's biggest media markets. I built a TV station and a live streaming platform at a newspaper in San Diego, California. I've written for web, I've created radio shows, and I've also produced virtual reality at the University of South Florida. Before the coronavirus pandemic, I taught students how to create TV newscasts at a beautiful studio on our university's campus. Students learned how to direct, run the control room switcher, operate the audio board, set up studio cameras and lights. When students walk into this room, they know they've almost made it. There's an energy in the air that you just breathe in and know that your dreams of becoming a professional journalist are almost within reach. And just like that, it seemed like their futures had just been taken away from them. And I completely understand their frustrations. They had worked so hard to finally get into this class. So I created a plan that I'm going to share with you today that allowed us to continue to produce broadcast quality TV newscasts from home. But before I jump into the workflows and all the tips, I want to give you an idea of what kind of newscasts my students have been creating. So here's one show that they created in Tampa. It aired on PBS in the 12th largest media market in the entire country, and it was created 100% from home.
Hello and welcome to Florida Focus. I'm Cheyenne Pagan.
And I'm Trevor Lloyd. Dr. Anthony Fauci is calling Florida's reopening very concerning. Today he warned that we could see more outbreaks after the governor lifted nearly every restriction to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Counties are now scrambling to get the word out that masks are still required. People in Hillsborough County got this text: masks are required in any indoor location except your home. Face coverings are also mandatory in Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas, and Manatee, but the governor's Phase 3 announcement means that people will no longer get fined for not wearing them.
Florida businesses can now open at full capacity. Reporter Demi Asensio explains how this could affect Tampa as we prepare to host the Super Bowl.
Over the weekend, Florida passed 700,000 cases of COVID-19. Governor Ron DeSantis says he wants Tampa to host a sold-out Super Bowl right here at Raymond James Stadium. He says there will be no major restrictions at the game in February.
Outdoor transmission has just not been a major factor.
Last time Tampa hosted the Super Bowl, more than 100,000 fans traveled here from across the country. Some health experts worry that many travelers could create a second wave of coronavirus. But money talks, and the NFL says hosting the Super Bowl can bring $300 to $500 million to the city. Reporting for Florida Focus, I'm Demi Asensio.
You only have 1 week left to register to vote in the November election. Early voting begins 3 weeks from today. Donald Trump and Joe Biden will debate for the first time tomorrow night at 9.
A Tampa nonprofit is teaching minority students about artificial intelligence. Reporter Ashley Reyes explains how the AI Education Project is preparing young people to navigate a system often rigged against them.
AI algorithms often make it much harder for people of color to go to college, pay student loans, and buy a house. That's why the AI Education Project is helping students understand what they're up against. USF's Upward Bound program is partnering with the project to train underserved students on emerging technology.
It'd be critical for them to use this artificial intelligence class as a bridge to kind of challenging their critical thinking skills.
Reporting for Florida Focus, I'm Ashley Reyes.
Thank you for watching Florida Focus.
Have a great evening.
So here's how we did it. We use Google Calendars to schedule out who is going to do what role on any given day. So if we look at this date, we have Trevor and Kaylee anchoring the Monday show, and again they'll anchor Wednesday show, and then we have Dylan and Tabria anchoring the Tuesday show and the Thursday show. So let's look at this day as an example. We have our anchors. They always know who they're going to be a while in advance so that they can prepare. Tobias is going to be my associate producer. Our graphics operator is going to be Callie. They're going to create over-the-shoulder graphics that you're going to see on screen when the anchor comes up from our virtual newsroom set. Our producer here is basically going to oversee the entire day and work really closely with me. And you see these roles change throughout the week so that different students can get experience on things that they're interested in. We have one reporter on this day, but you'll see there are some days where we have two. They go out into the field and shoot video and reporter stand-ups and do interviews and write longer stories, whereas our writers for the day will usually write really short stories, maybe 20-second stories with video or maybe full screen graphics. Maybe they'll pull a press conference from a Zoom meeting or something like that. And then we have a show editor. Because we're doing it remotely, we're not doing the traditional control room director. So Demi is going to be editing the show in post in Premiere Pro, and because Vanessa's been doing this for a while, this is going to be Demi's first day. Vanessa's going to help and work through Microsoft Teams to communicate and help Demi along. So this is basically how our day gets started. Everybody knows ahead of time what role they are going to do. So we have this Facebook group. It's a private group. We have lots of students from other classes who work together with us, so they've joined as well. And so you can see already the producer is hard at work. She's been posting and tagging the students to let them know what their roles are and just remind them and basically cheer them on, and it's basically like the cheerleader at first, and maybe also give some ideas. And as you can see, people have already started to basically let the producer know, what their status of their stories are. Everybody kind of jumps in and cheers them on, but also helps give information about like how long their story is, how many seconds is it, and they may also be working ahead in the future days and letting people know, okay, let's look ahead, let's plan, and then you'll see these are the stories that the students are pitching. So the students will go onto Facebook, they'll pitch their stories, and they'll explain what the story is and why they think it's newsworthy for our target audience, which is the PBS TV viewers. They'll also include some links and then post some updates as they shoot stories ahead of time. They'll explain, what they've done so far, which is a really good way for everybody to communicate easily, so everyone gets little notifications on their phones as people update them. It's also a great way to ask for help. So Peyton, for example, used this post to ask if anybody else had this error message in Adobe Premiere Pro, and our TV engineer is also part of the group, so he'll join in and give helpful tutorials and help people work through some technical issues. It's also a good place for the people, like this is our producer, but anybody could share story ideas. This one's kind of up for grabs, and then just some information on updates on stories that we're following, like our school districts are cutting teachers because of the pandemic, and here are some updates here. It's also used as a way to kind of give people examples of cool things that they can try. So some of our reporters are interested in using the green screens to shoot virtual stand-ups, and so I tagged one of the reporters who was specifically asking about how to do this on a story that one of my friends had done for a different TV station a little while ago. And then this is just a good place to kind of keep people up to date, let people know what's going on. So after the stories are pitched and the producer and I approve them, the producer will use Excel online. We use Box to house all of our content. And so every day we have a different rundown that we use Excel for. So the producer will fill this out. It's kind of formatted like a really simple version of the content management system used at TV news stations across the country, like iNews or ENPS. Our show is pretty short because we do it every single day, and the students also have other classes. So we have a 2-minute and 30-second show. The producer will basically say which stories are going to be airing in what order and how much time each reporter or writer has for that specific story. The producer will also communicate to the show editor what the background behind the anchor will be. Some of the anchors are behind our virtual TV news set, whereas the other ones are in the control room. And also this is a good place for people to see what they're working on and who's assigned. And when I've gone through and approved their graphics or their video, I'll make a little note here. That way the show editor can get a head start putting some of those on their timeline a little bit earlier. We also use Box to house our Word Online scripts. So this is an example of a script that was written a little bit ago, and these are the students that get credits on it for every time that they collaborate in the class. This is the script that shows which anchor is going to read and what format we have. We'll have an over-the-shoulder graphic. We're going to have a VO, which is video that's going to play, and just some editor notes, which is how we communicate to the video editors what kind of video we want to be playing. And so sometimes you'll see a couple of comments left here from before, but if we look at a script that's being worked on right now, we usually have lots of comments back and forth, and it's a live document, so you don't have to save it ever, which is a really good thing about Word Online, and we can all be chatting in here at the same time. We also post like information, how did you fact check this, and just some feedback and some suggestions, and everybody jumps in here and uses it this way. While we're fine-tuning the scripts, the anchors are setting up their green screens at home. We decided to start shooting in 4K because all of their cell phones allow a 4K option, which gives us a lot of room to scale or adjust in post when we edit this in Adobe Premiere Pro. Here are some quick tips for you to make sure that your green screen looks professional. Lighting is the most important thing. Make sure that you light the green screen behind you evenly and also light your face. Step as far away from the green screen as possible to avoid casting any shadows. Shadows on your green screen will make the green look different shades, which will be harder for you to key out in post, which basically means it'll be harder to remove that green screen so that you can replace it with something like a virtual TV studio. The more distance you have between you and the green screen, the better, but just make sure the green is totally behind you, including up above your head. You want to make sure that your entire body outline has green screen around it so that you could key yourself out and pop yourself onto a virtual set. I'll show you how to key yourself out in just a minute, but first I want to go to one of our anchors who's taking you behind the scenes of her house to show you her entire setup at home.
Hey everyone, I'm Demi Asensio, and I'm going to take you behind the scenes of what it's like anchoring from home for Florida Focus. So behind me right now, you can see this setup, but I want to show you what it's like from the anchor's point of view. So I am going to flip my camera and show you. Okay, so now that my camera is flipped, you can see the green screen. Over here, I have a steamer to make sure all of the wrinkles come out, along with some computer paper to white balance. Then when you turn, you can see my dog, but you can also see all of the lights and the teleprompter. I did have to move all of my furniture back so I could fit everything, but in the teleprompter, you can see where the phone or DSLR goes, whatever is being used to film with. But this iPad is what plays the scripts for the anchors. So you can see as that pops up on there. So if I was anchoring, I would press start and move back to where I need to be. I put an X to know, and you'll see as the script starts to pop up. So I would read this off with, of course, my phone or DSLR set up and my microphone. But once that is done, I would check to make sure the audio and the lighting is good. That way it's ready to air.
We're really fortunate that our school is able to buy a few of those teleprompters that the anchors will pass off to the next week's anchor every week. But you can use a free teleprompter app with your cell phone as long as you're shooting with your front-facing or selfie camera. Or you can turn your computer into a teleprompter and record yourself with your web camera. There are lots of free options. Just Google free teleprompter. The one I'm showing you here is qteleprompter.com. The main thing to keep in mind is that your eyes should look as close to the camera lens as possible. You can make the text smaller and move it closer to the lens, and that'll help you avoid seeing your eyes moving back and forth while you're reading. When the anchors are done recording their videos, they'll upload them into Box. So I want to give you an idea of how we go through the editing process, including how to key out on a green screen. So I already downloaded Diana's. Her co-anchor is Kaylee, and I'm going to download that just by clicking on these three dots and hitting download. In addition to the anchor video, we're also going to download other media that is expressed in the rundown as VOs, OTS graphics, packages, full screen graphics, and that way we can assemble them all on the timeline exactly the way the producer had asked for the show editor to put it all together. We're also going to look at the scripts to make sure that we're following along and bringing those videos up at the right time. So after I've downloaded those anchor videos, I'm going to go and make sure that I've put everything in one folder in Premiere Pro. So I downloaded Kaylee's and Diana's, and I'm putting them inside of a folder for today's show. That way they don't get lost on in my downloads or something. So once I have these here, I'm going to put them into Premiere Pro. I've already have a template rundown here that I've created. We're going to use a new sequence in Premiere Pro. We use AVC HD 1080i 3060i, that's just 1080 HD and 30 frames per second, which is about the frames per second that TV shows usually air at. So I'm going to just name it the date. I think this show aired on the 15th. This just as an example. And since I already have all of this here, I can just highlight, copy it, and put it into my timeline. That way, things that I use on a everyday basis, like the show open, and also all of the backgrounds, will be there for me ready to go so that I don't have to rebuild them every single time. And that will save the show editor quite a bit of time. The next part is I'm going to create a little new folder here just for today's show. Then I'm going to edit quickly pieces of it in front of you guys. So I'll put these anchor videos into the bin. And now I want to show you how we key them out. So there's a couple ways that you could do this, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag it onto my timeline. If you drag your video onto your timeline and you notice there's no audio sequence here, just go ahead and delete that. Right click, modify audio channels. And if you change it to mono and hit OK, then the audio should pop up. That's a pretty common thing with cell phones. So if you're editing cell phone video, this is something that pops up kind of frequently. So the reason that this is scaled in or zoomed in is because they were shooting in 4K. So I could right click, set to frame size, and now I can go ahead and mask Diana out before I go ahead and key her. So I'm going to hit my effects control, and I'm going to use this little free draw button thing here and just kind of crop her out. That way I don't have to worry about all of the stuff on the side, like the walls and the hallway, and I can go back and make this a little smaller or tighter later. So I can go down and move this around, but you always want to make sure that when you mask somebody that you're not going to cut off like their hand or something if they talk with their hand. I move a lot when I talk, so I always have to do this next step to make sure that I'm not cutting that off. So I'll just kind of scroll back and forth to make sure she doesn't move out of the mask, and she does not. So I can tighten this even further. The smaller the mask, the less you have to key out, because these inconsistencies in lighting is it's something that you can expect even if you do a great job of lighting your green screen. You're just going to have some different patches that are slightly different shades of green. And so masking at first will really help you avoid any weird little things on the edges. So all of these little wrinkles that we're seeing here don't have to be keyed out. So I just move back and forth again to make sure that Diana's staying inside of this section, and she is, which is great. I'm also looking at my audio levels, making sure that they're negative 12 decibels. The next thing I'm going to do is add my effect. So if you go into the effects and just type in Ultra, you'll see Ultra key. And I'm going to drag and drop it right here. And then I'm going back into my effects control panel. I'm going to use this little eyedropper and select one of these green parts. You'll notice that not all of the green is even, and that's very common. It's very, very hard to perfectly light your green screen. That's why, like I said earlier, you want to try your very best to light it as evenly as possible, because when we switch into alpha channel, we can see there's some things outside here. But we have a couple tricks that we can apply that will kind of fix this. You can add Lumetri color, which could brighten the green, but I'm going to skip that step. If you're more advanced, you're welcome to ask me about that later. So I'm going to drop down this, and usually if I increase my pedestal, you'll see I get a cleaner key. So now when I go back to my composite, I just want to make sure that I haven't done anything funky to Diana. And I'm looking around and she looks very good. But sometimes we have what's called spill, which is the reflection of the green And it tends to happen if you have lighter colored hair, or sometimes if you're wearing lighter clothes. Although in this case, it's not too bad because Diana's pretty far away from her green screen. But if I wanted to just be extra cautious, I'm going to go in and click on the spill suppression, and I can adjust the spill, and that might help remove some of the green from her hair. Occasionally you'll want to use the choke option, but sometimes you can choke too much. So if you see she's kind of shrinking, you don't want to shrink them too much because you want them to look normal. But if you need to, sometimes there's like a little green layer around. You could use this choke function that way. I try to avoid editing more than I need to because you don't want it to look fake. So when I scroll through here, it's looking pretty good. There are some other options that you may want to choose. Sometimes the shadow works really well. Occasionally you want a slight soften if you have what's called some crispy edges here, but this looks really good. Because she's shot in 4K, I can now scale her and move her around to make sure that she fits on the set. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab like this little piece. Normally I would listen to what she's saying to make sure that it matches up with the rundown. But just to kind of give you an idea of how this would work, I would move her up on a different video channel and drag her over here. So now she's on top of the virtual sets. We start our show with split screen. So one of our anchors on one side. I'm going to go over to my rundown and see Diana is on the control room side. So I'm going to move her to the left by clicking my effects control, and these options here will move you up and down or left and right. I also want to scale her, so zoom in a little bit. That way she fits perfectly. And the reason that we shoot in 4K is so that we could do this. This is really helpful. If you don't shoot in 4K, you just can't scale as much because the more you scale, the more the quality will be degraded. So I generally try to center her about there, and now we're good. Now she's on top of the set, and then I'll go ahead and add her co-anchor. So I go back into my bin, and now I do Kaylee's. Usually I would edit all of Diana's full show. So I would do her second story and then the end as well. But just since I'm trying to save you guys some time, I'll just quickly show you the same thing with Kaylee. So I'll go ahead and scale out and then do my little quick cuts here. And then of course, if this was a real show, I would be a little bit more, have a little bit more attention to detail. But just so that you guys can get the idea, I'm going to use the Ultra key as well on Kaylee, and then go ahead and just eyedrop, click her right out. And she did a really good job lighting, but you'll see sometimes there's some green since her hair is lighter. So we'll want to reduce some of that spill, and we can also boost that pedestal up a little bit. Okay, now Kaylee is ready to be added to the very beginning of the show. I'm just going to grab a random piece from her just to kind of give you this example, but of course normally you would want those to be specific parts of your show. So I'm going to go ahead and move Kaylee on top of Diana and just zoom in on my timeline a little bit because it's kind of hard to see what I'm doing. So now you see both of them are beside one another. I'm going to move Kaylee over to the right, and I'm going to move her up and down a little bit once I scale. So I'm going to move her over here, scale up a little bit, and I try to make them, you know, life size, whatever the real size is in real life. Some people are taller, some people are shorter, but you know, you don't want it to be like tiny. So this is about right. Here we go. And that's the beginning of our show. So we use the exact same thing when we go and put our anchor over here. We also add the OTS graphics. So if we go back over here to Box, we can go into our folders and find what everybody else has been creating. So we have a media folder where everybody uploads their news of the day content. This one was on the 15th. So I'm going to go into the 15th box. This is the anchor videos file we were just in. But let's go ahead and take a look at this one, for example. I think had an over the shoulder graphic. I'm just going to download that, and I would download all of my media and again move it over to this folder right here. So I'm going to move this over here, and then I'm going to go ahead and import it into my bin. That way I can go ahead and put it on my timeline. The great thing about our set is that we always have the over-the-shoulder graphic in the same spot. So when I put this over here, it's going to fill the entire screen. What I could do is I can go up to my effects control after I've highlighted it. I could scale it down, I could move it around, and then I could make it eventually fit into the space. But instead what I've done, because Premiere Pro has these like really great things called presets, I've fit the size that it's supposed to be, and then I've right-clicked Save as Preset, and since I've already saved an OTS preset, I'll give you an example of what I would do. So normally, let's delete this one. I would drag this onto the timeline, and it would be full screen. But if I go over to my effects and hit X on Ultra key, I've already created an OTS-R. That's over the shoulder, and it's on the right. If I drag and drop, it'll pop right into place. So some of these things are really helpful. They're going to save you time. As you continue to build the show, you'll lay it onto the timelines as the stories come up. And this has been really helpful for us. We work really well in Box because you see everybody here who's working on things can upload all of their graphics, and it's been really great. When the editor is done, they'll FTP the show to PBS using FileZilla. Then they'll upload an MP4 to Box. That's when a class that we collaborate with will download these videos. Those news editing students then publish the videos on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, and on Twitter. They also write AP-style web stories for the USF Newsroom website, where student journalists publish news every single day. They'll embed the newscast and add additional information that might be beneficial for our viewers. Shooting video with our cell phones has made this entire process a lot easier. There's a couple things you need to do before you start shooting video with an iPhone. Go into your settings and make sure that you've adjusted a couple of things in your camera section. Make sure that your grid is on. If your grid bars are on, it'll really help with your rule of thirds. Then check formats. You want to make sure you're set to most compatible. That way you won't have a streaming high efficiency codec that'll be harder for you to edit in Premiere Pro. Another thing that you want to change is your airplane mode. Before you start an interview, make sure that you've put your airplane mode on. That'll help avoid incoming calls from interrupting your shoots. At the beginning of the semester, we also review some basic video tips that'll really make your cell phone camera look a lot better. Here are a couple that you can use. If you're interviewing somebody in person, you want to look for a source of light. So if you're inside, go for a window or a sliding glass door. Just make sure that their backs aren't facing the window. If that happens, that light will shoot right into your camera lens and it'll close the iris and it'll be really hard to see their face. If you're shooting somebody outside, you also want to consider lighting. Put them in the most evenly lit place as possible. If you put them right in the center of the sun, it'll make them squint and it'll cast really harsh shadows on their face. You want to avoid putting somebody under the shadow of a tree because that'll cast some weird shadows from the leaves, and when the wind blows, they'll be bouncing around on the person's face and it'll distract your audience from the story. You also want to avoid bad lead room, so make sure that the person is looking across the screen at you, the interviewer. Also make sure that you have proper headroom and that you avoid this side profile shot because then your audience won't feel like they're a part of the conversation. When you're interviewing somebody remotely, make sure to ask that they center themselves, they have proper headroom, and they're looking into the camera toward a source of light, like a window or a sliding glass door. If you are about to start an interview on Zoom or Teams and you notice they're sitting right in front of a window and all that light is pouring right into their camera, make sure to ask them to turn around so that light hits their face. That'll be the biggest difference that you're going to see when you start doing interviews remotely. You want to help the person light their face properly, so don't be afraid to tell them just to turn around and face that source of light. I asked a few of my students to share with you what it's been like taking a TV news class remotely. I also asked them to share some advice with you because they were in your shoes just a few years ago, and some of them are only a few months away from getting their first TV news jobs.
So when we started our broadcast remotely, there were certainly new challenges that presented themselves, but nothing that we couldn't overcome together as a group. I've found personally the way to be the most successful with all these new changes is that it doesn't necessarily revolve around whether if I can anchor or report or edit a show from home, but much more to do with personal communication skills and organizational skills and time management skills. These personal attributes are normally very important in a regular newsroom, but need to be sharp if we're going to be remotely broadcasting. They're going to be scrutinized. It's far easier to ignore a Facebook message or a text message that requires a response from us than it is to ignore a direct command in a newsroom. It's far easier to lose track of time when we're comfortable in our own home. But the importance of a broadcast deadline hasn't gone anywhere. That's why I would say personal communication is at top importance when doing this kind of new work. All the other stuff you can learn on your own, and there's people to help you learn these new skills just like any other task. But if you were to ask me, the success for broadcast journalism remotely is deeply rooted in self-reliance.
When I found out that we would be putting together a newscast remotely, my first question was, how is this going to work? How can that happen? But I knew we had a professor that would orchestrate the whole process along the way, and we had each other, our fellow classmates, to have each other's backs and know that at the end of the day, we could come together to produce something that we were proud of. So in that sense, it never feels lonely. It's always exciting that we're always in touch with each other and in communication with each other to produce something that is super special at the end of the day. And I think putting together a newscast remotely is kind of a hidden gem of an opportunity, because with all the different roles that we have producers, associate producers, reporters, anchors, writers, videographers, editors, and everyone is working so closely that it almost makes, me personally, it makes me understand the different roles better, because they're so intertwined and we're communicating so closely with them. I understand the different roles, and I also understand now, having set up my own anchor gear, that whole process and how that works. So having that hands-on experience, I think, will help when we're eventually able to go out into actual studios. I'll have that deeper understanding now of the whole process. So I think my only regret is not having the opportunity in my schedule in previous semesters to do this sooner, because I can't get enough of it and I just want more of it. So I think it's just super cool that all of us, even if we're on opposite sides of the state, can come together at the end of the day to produce something that we're proud of.
So if someone were to have told me that I would be creating a newscast from home ever in my life, I don't think I would believe them. But under the circumstances that is going on right now in the world, I was told that, and I was scared at first. I didn't know how we would do it. I didn't know if I would be able to do it. It was a lot of unknowns. I didn't really understand how it would happen, how it would all come together. We're used to being in a control room, using equipment, and putting it together there in front of our eyes, and now you're relying on other people to do their job so it can all come together too. And I think that from my perspective, it has worked really well. Obviously, we have some technology bumps in the road, but it's about teamwork and it's about communication, constant communication between who you're working with. And I think that I'm very fortunate enough to be working with absolutely amazing people, amazing journalists, very driven students. And I think that has really helped the atmosphere that I am in. For me personally, I did struggle at first setting up anchor equipment in my own living room when I'm living with 3 other people. It was hard at first. It was definitely hard. It was hard to figure out how to get the perfect lighting and what angle to put your camera at. But the more you work at it, the more it got easier. And I feel like we're finally all starting to understand how it really works to make a newscast from home. I think a lot of it also is pushing yourself constantly, being self-motivated to constantly keep looking up new ways to do things, or if you do this early, then you have more time to edit it and more time for those technological errors that may not have occurred if we weren't doing things from home. So I feel like a big part of it is self-motivation, is constant communication with your teamwork, and don't give up on yourself. Even if you're feeling discouraged, like, oh, like nothing's working out for me, it's new. We're all new to this. No one has really ever done this before, and it's okay to feel like you're struggling at first. Everyone has to struggle a little bit to pass those hardships, and then once you get over that, bump, it will all start to feel better. Being a journalist is very rewarding. Find the stories that you care about. The stories that you care more about are stories that you'll be more passionate about working on, and that passion will show through in the outcome of the story. There are days where you have to focus on really news-heavy stories, but on your own time, find the stories that you care about that no one else is telling, and tell them. Don't think that you can't do it, because you can. You just have to work a little bit harder to get there.
This semester has been a challenge of its own, but it's a great opportunity to learn how to adapt to a new environment. The roles that you typically see in the newsroom have not changed. What has changed is what you make out of it. It is very important to be a team player no matter what your role may be. It adds to the significance to whatever you may be producing. Since you are not in the traditional newsroom atmosphere, it is very important to make sure you are still putting in the same effort, if not more. It is easy to lack detail when you are home, but don't let that be an excuse. You still want to write for the ear and make the most out of it. For me, it has been a learning opportunity. Broadcast remotely has taught me that deadlines are the most important aspect. By meeting deadlines, you are fulfilling that criteria of being a team player. Everyone relies on one another, and communication is the key to success.
We have to learn and adapt to the situations that are given to us. And that's what we did, and we're very proud of that. But a virtual newsroom is all about adaptation. Who has this? Who has that? Are you doing this? And that's everyone. That's not just producers, that's anchors, that's reporters, that's the editors. Everyone's working in tandem, and one fails and the whole chain starts to break. So be the strongest link and be the most adaptable link. You have to be that person that's going to be proactive. If I want to get an interview with someone, I'm going to email as many people as I can. I'm going to call as many people as I can until I get that interview. Why? Because I want it. I want it to air. I want it in print. That's what I want. And if you have that sort of mood set and that sort of drive, you will be successful in this field.
Hi everyone, my name is Diana Haloum. I'm an upcoming graduate here at the University of South Florida. I've dreamt about being a news anchor my entire life. I really love media, I love politics, and I truly do believe we are the watchdogs of democracy. My biggest advice for all of you is to just believe in yourselves. Really believe in yourselves and believe in your skill set. Whatever you're really good at and whatever you love about media, whether that's anchoring, reporting, videography, photography, whatever it is, continue to build onto that skill set, but also keep an open mind. You never know what else you may love. I got into college and now I love graphics design just as much as I love anchoring. So keep an open mind. I wish you all the best of luck. Remember to always be truthful, honest, and transparent.
Thank you so much for your time today. I wish you luck in your future. And as you can see from this video, TV news is really, really hard work, but it's one of the most rewarding and exciting careers in the world. If you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to reach out to me on social media. And if you want to learn anything more about the Florida Focus class, subscribe to our YouTube channel.